Good evening, everybody. This is Prospector Jess from huntingforgold.com. So this evening we're broadcasting, but we're getting stuck behind a Facebook outage. Go figure. I think Facebook is feeling the onslaught of global warming and having a meltdown. So, in the meanwhile, we're going to just plow on ahead. Part of our problem is that we're doing Alaska. That's the icebox of the West. And for this edition, we're going to take a good close look at what's going on here. But you can see readily that the dogs are barking like crazy. Ignore them. So you're going to see this band of gold that follows this upper end of the Ring of Fire. This is around the Pacific Ocean. Very important to pay attention to what's going on in this situation. We have lots of volcanoes, earthquakes, uplifting, that's orogenic activity, and glaciation and water. All of those mix and combine to make some of the greatest gold prospecting on planet Earth, right here in our backyard. So the Yukon Territory is right adjacent, and it's even more gold. So it's but that's Canada, and we'll cover that in another section. But for this part, we're looking at what's going on here in the region around Alaska. We've seen Gold Rush Alaska, and we've seen Gold Rush, both of them working their applies their trades in Alaska, in the interior, and up in the area along the Bering Strait, Bering Sea. And so it gets to be kind of interesting to see what can be done here in terms of gold. It's a pretty amazing amount of gold at that. So first thing I wanted to call your attention to, let's zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to switch screens. And oh, and by the way, don't forget, we still have the Gold Diggers Underground Gold Prospectors Bonanza Club is still available. Check out that link below and go find out what you can about how to learn to find even more gold than simply these maps. There's a lot more to prospecting than just looking at the maps and discovering it. That's a great place to start. It's not a good place to finish. So if you want to find out about more things that help you find the gold and know what you're looking at when it comes to rivers and rocks, take a look at the GDU. So as you can see, there's sort of a wide spectrum of places where gold is found. And that's kind of the nature of the upheaval that's happening in Alaska. There's a tremendous amount of mountain building going on, both volcanic and tectonic, earthquake. Tectonics is when plates move and crush and crumble into each other and cause the mountains to open up and release their stores. It also allows fractures to form and things like that, as we've talked about before, so that quartz load can be injected in hydrothermal deposits. So a lot of things going on here. But let's just go look at, say, around Anchorage, for example. So let's look, here we go. We got right downtown Anchorage, Point Woronzow, gold commodity, or Woronzow. I wonder when that one was discovered. Anchorage, Alaska. Okay, the reference for it is Cardex. It doesn't give a date. So, okay, we don't know. That's simple. Let's go to the next nearest one here, Rabbit Creek. Gold placer prospect. The reason why I'm curious is I'm wondering about the history of the area, and you should do that. You know, dive into the history a bit and see what you can understand. Same Cardex, so we're not getting references about. It was also called Big Rabbit Creek, Krupinski, Thomas Malay, Little Rabbit Creek. So I had various names for the mine there. It's a placer prospect. DWB. Doesn't say exactly who recorded or when, so we're not finding what we were looking for in that respect. There are quite a few out toward this side. Let's look at Miller, gold. And what you typically do on one of these is not jump around. Oh, I just pulled up the full report. That's another thing. So it popped up an extension here with a complete USGS report giving you where in hydrologic units. Hydrologic units get back to what I was talking about a month ago or so about riparian and watersheds, riparian areas. So you're looking at how how much water flow goes into this zone, where is it located, so you can figure out how much flow and flooding there is, and therefore where the gold might drive to, and just about how much when you get floods like we're getting this year. Gives Seward, Meridian, Alaska. Minerals availability system is where it's stored. MAS, Cardex. Page 74. U.S. Bureau of Mines is the reporter. So, oh, there we go. A 1988. So recent. Okay? Recent information. And that probably is true of most of these things up in that area, because they kind of keep track of that stuff. I'll let that go with that. Let's go back to Google Earth. So that kind of gives us a quick view of what's going on around Anchorage. But you can see these crests that go along, and right in the middle of this stuff is all of this glacier activity, right? And a big hint, those glaciers release gold, but we've talked about how it tends to crush it, so you don't find gold so much on the glacier as you do in the moraines at the tips. So for example, down in here you'll find pyrite and gold, prospect with gold, Granite Island, I'll give you a hint, there's some copper and gold. Okay, but these are all glaciers, so when we dive deep, we can see they're just buried in mountains and mountains of snow and ice, and it's flowing into the ocean. These are those, you know, lateral moraines going down the center of the glaciers, right? And then at the tip is your terminal moraine, okay? And so what happens is the gold will tend to deposit at the terminal moraine and somewhat along the laterals where they sort of get a chance after the glacier starts to retreat. It'll tend to concentrate material down at the tip here. But most of the stuff inside here will be scrubbed free, and all you'll have left is anything that would be load in the rock, something that didn't move when the ice tore into it. But you can see how there's a ridge right along here where the ice is tearing into the mountainside and removing all that rock and mineral load and depositing it downstream in the form of rubble or cobbles down at the end in the terminal moraine, and out further in this outwash, which you may or may not be able to see here. But typically there'll be some flood gold and lots of what's the term, rock dust. There's a term for it though. Park it and we'll see what comes back later. Probably will. My brain tends to do that. You know, an idea will come along and I'll go, oh, I don't remember that word. What is it? And if I let go, it comes to me. If I don't, I get in trouble. Now, of course, the maps here are a little funny because they're overlaid. You know, it's a combination of stuff that's satellite information, relatively recent, and then there's data, SIO, NOAA, U.S. Navy, NGA, GEBCO. You see this SIO, NOAA. Some of this data, I don't know so much about Alaska area, but some of the data you've been looking at along the coastal area, I actually digitized when I was in school. Pretty funny, another life. But all these submarine canyons and stuff use special seismic equipment, and I was involved in geophysics and got a job doing data reduction for the SIO data center there, and so at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. That's what SIO stands for. And it was a pretty neat trek, but you know, it's one of those things, kids do all kinds of stuff for money when they're that young, for cheap. So I became a human analog to digital interface, you know, a ruler and measure stuff and then sing it off and type it into a card punch. It was tedious. Oh boy, was it tedious. And every once in a while we'd get a piece of data that made no sense, and then we realized somebody switched a switch and didn't write it in the log. And it created what we called a telephone pole. You'd get this spike in data where the bottom rises in one data point, goes 2 points, and then comes back down. Nothing on the ocean bottom does that. In general, nothing does that on the face of the earth. There's no sharp edges. They look sharp, but they always have some kind of a bevel to them. And that usually is a telltale. The steepness and sharpness is a telltale about the rock structures and things like that, or the way the water flows. You know, the water never turns a 90-degree corner. It can't, because it would take infinite amount of energy to make it turn that corner. It turns slowly around that corner, and if you looked inside, you'd find that there's a big dead spot at the corner. And the reason is just what I said. It can't turn that corner that fast, so it has to kind of slow down. And what it does is every corner reduces the amount of energy in a pipe. Same thing holds true in a river. Every time you turn a bend, you're removing some energy. Guess what that energy does? It scours stuff and moves it. And that energy turns out to be the stuff that redeposits gold into concentrated pay streaks. But it's all a function of hydrodynamics. Okay, so that's that part of Alaska. Now, so let's go up and look along Bering Sea gold. Okay, let's go up in this area up here. Anvil Creek. We've got tungsten, gold, lead, galena, gold, and scheelerite. Gold, placer, past producer at Q Creek. So a lot of gold up in this region. So you can see how a lot of times these things follow some of these, again, the mountain ranges and how they're structured. Now let's go down and look along the Aleutian Islands, because that's kind of interesting. Take a look at this. A lot of volcanic activity down in here, but take a look at this. This island is full. Unga Island. So we got silver, gold, zinc, lead, mercury, arsenic, copper. So a mixture of everything you can think of. The ore is pyrite. There we go. So we're in that solid solution mix kind of thing. Here's an unknown prospect, has galena, gold, pyrite, sphalerite. Silver and gold, zinc, antimony, lead, mercury. So we got a lot of this good stuff. So this island is chock full of minerals. And that's pretty typical of stuff you see out here on the Aleutian chain. Just tons and tons of prospects with tons and tons of minerals. Soft point, copper, epithermal vein, genetic, generic, gold, silver, copper, and molybdenum. Build yourself some chrome moly race tubes. Copper, silver, and gold. And this stuff continues on across until you get out pretty far out. I don't know. Yep, look at that, way out on the tip here. Bayer Bay has polymetallic veins of gold. Andrew Lake, zinc, gold, copper. A pretty remote island. Got anything out here? Nope. So way out on the Aleutian chain, we're just a couple miles off from Russia. There's Kamchatka. So that's about it for that section. But you can see how the gold swings all the way around the ring of fire, which surrounds the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific plate is kind of crashing into Alaska up here, and all of this is being spread out and crunched up. I don't know quite which plate this is up here, because this wouldn't necessarily be the Pacific plate this far up. I'd have to get a plate map and stick it up there, but that's where my geography of plates kind of dies a little bit. Been a while. There's a couple triple points up in this area where multiple plates collide, and that creates a situation where you can have lots of earthquakes, lots more volcanoes, and lots of potential for tsunamis. And that happens in Alaska and all the way down, and now they're discovering there's a lot of potential along the Oregon coast and Northern California all the way up through Seattle. Much bigger than they ever knew before. So that's kind of been breaking news for the last decade, maybe 5 years, but geologically speaking, that's pretty recent. The understanding that there was a major earthquake, a megaquake up there in not historic, but just slightly prehistoric times, just because it wasn't recorded by us. The Indians recall it, and there was tremendous amount of damage in the inland areas. So you can find the salt deposits that go miles inward where there should be no salt, and that's how they know how far a tsunami went, by how it cuts and what kind of stuff is left behind in terms of residue. Copper, Nichols Bay. So now we're kind of down along southern Alaska. So we're looking in this whole area from British Columbia on north, and you can see how there's just all these inlets and outlets and so forth. And again, lots of glaciation in this area, lots of sounds and inlets. Those are steep canyons, typically glacier cut. Gold and silver. And so again, huge wing of gold going up this area, and it looks like it's just all in Alaska, but in reality it goes inland. This whole area of British Columbia is chock full of gold, and so is the Yukon. So we'll cover that in another edition, but that's it for tonight for this area and Alaska and its gold. Tremendous opportunity, and if you get a chance to view, take a look at this picture I've got right here. That is Alaska gold. So take a look. You see that big chunk there? That's let's see, 1.02 ounces of 2 pieces of gold that were pulled out of a roadbed in Alaska by my good friend Chuck Smalley. So it's one of those things where with a metal detector, a mine lab, a recent unit, and it was that isn't the least of what you picked up. Those are just nice, pretty looking nuggets. So I like that picture. He let me use it. But it is one of those things where you want to be able to kind of know where these possibilities are. That typically this kind of gold that's found in this picture is found as a residue from mining operations. What he was doing was going back into these areas where these mines are. He got permission to go to several mines and pick the roadways and travelways and the tailings piles and run them over with a detector, and he was pulling out all kinds of gold. And that's a great opportunity for you if you have a detector. It's also an opportunity if you have some other equipment where you can reprocess the residue, or use one of those MD20 detectors I was talking about over some things that get a detector out or a small detector and go over some ore that looks potential, and just separate the might be from the no and the leaverites, and leave it right there, throw the leverite over. But that's a opportunity you have when you go to Alaska. There's just tons of gold, and literally you just have to know what you're looking for and make sure you don't dig any ancient waterfalls for too long, when you should have gotten up there with a seismic detector and detected how deep that waterfall was. It's a whole nother story behind waterfalls and how they work, and that's something I'll go into later. But the hydropower behind a waterfall has a particular impact on gold and where it will deposit and where it will not. And if you don't know that, you'll spend a lot of years digging away at Porcupine Creek and not realize that this prospect's going to be really expensive to go after. Is it worth it? Do I want to really dig this big hole, or should I go on? It's a good question that could have been answered in season 1. Episode 1, maybe 2, do a little painting and that kind of stuff. But for goodness sake, if you really think something has that kind of prospect, that it looks like it has an ancient waterfall that's buried, you got to find out what the underground structure looks like before you go piling on the D8 tractors and D10s. It just makes no sense. But that's it for Prospector Jess for tonight. I just thought I'd throw in those notes. Here, where is gold in Alaska? And as I said before, remember to check out the GDU offer I've got. The link down below, sourdoughminer.com/GDU / and go check it out. It's worth learning more about how I can help you find more gold. Good prospecting. Prospector Jess, over and out.